The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps as I sat in Marcus Whitfield's corner office, my laptop balanced on my knees, fingers flying across the keyboard. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and the Denver skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind his mahogany desk. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, watching me work with the satisfied expression of someone who'd just solved a puzzle. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Faster, Riley, he said, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against his coffee mug. The Henderson Group presentation is due first thing tomorrow, and you know how they are about punctuality. I didn't look up from the screen. I'd been in this office since 6 a.m., rebuilding the entire pitch deck because Marcus had decided at lunch that our original strategy was too conservative. This was the third complete overhaul this week. My back ached, my eyes burned, and I hadn't eaten anything since the granola bar I'd grabbed at 2 p.m. Done, I said, hitting save and rotating the laptop toward him. Market analysis, competitive positioning, 3-year projections, and implementation timeline. Marcus leaned forward, scanning the slides with the kind of intense focus he usually reserved for his golf swing. After 5 minutes of silence, he nodded slowly. Not bad, Carter. Not bad at all. He closed the laptop and slid it back to me. You know, I've been thinking about your performance lately. My pulse quickened. Performance reviews weren't scheduled for another 3 months, but Marcus had a habit of dropping career-changing conversations into random Thursday nights. The thing is, he continued, adjusting his cufflinks, you've got potential. Real potential. But you're still rough around the edges. Still learning the ropes. He paused, studying my face. You're good at execution, Riley, but strategy? Vision? That takes experience. That takes someone like me guiding every step. I felt something cold settle in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. I appreciate the feedback, Mr. Whitfield. Marcus, he corrected with a smile that never reached his eyes. We're past formalities at this point. After all, we're a team. And that's what I want to talk about. He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. I've been watching you work these past 2 years. You're dedicated, I'll give you that. You show up early, stay late, never complain. But there's something you need to understand about this business. He turned back to face me, and in the reflection of the window, I could see my own tired face staring back. Talent is cheap, he said. Work ethic is common. What's rare is the kind of strategic thinking that turns good work into great results. The ability to read a room, to know when to push and when to pull back. To command respect from clients who've been in this game longer than you've been alive. I nodded, though something in his tone made my skin crawl. That's why partnerships like ours work so well, Marcus continued. You bring the energy, the fresh perspective, the willingness to grind. I bring the wisdom, the connections, the gravitas that clients trust. Without me shaping your work, guiding your decisions, opening doors you didn't even know existed. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Well, let's just say you'd be starting from zero somewhere else. The words hit like a slap, but delivered with such casual confidence that for a moment, I almost believed them. Almost. I want you to remember that, Riley, he said, returning to his chair. In this industry, it's not just about being good. It's about being positioned by the right people, in the right way, at the right time. And right now, I'm the one positioning you. I gathered my laptop and notes, fingers trembling slightly. I'll remember that, Marcus. Good. He was already pulling out his phone, scrolling through emails. Oh, and Carter? I need you here by 7 a.m. tomorrow. The Henderson team moved their meeting up an hour, and I want to review the deck one more time before we present. I walked out of his office and through the empty halls of Pinnacle Strategic Consulting, my heels clicking against the polished marble floors. The security guard nodded as I passed, probably wondering why someone my age was still in the building at nearly 10 p.m. on a Thursday. I in the elevator, I caught my reflection in the brushed steel doors. 28 years old, MBA from Northwestern, 2 years of 16-hour days and weekend work sessions, and what did I have to show for it? A boss who thought I was nothing without his guidance, and a growing suspicion that he might be wrong. The next morning, I arrived at 6:45 a.m. with coffee and the revised presentation. Marcus strolled in at 8:30, 15 minutes before the Henderson meeting, looking refreshed and confident in his navy Tom Ford suit. Ready to knock this out of the park, he asked, straightening his tie in the reflection of his computer monitor. The Henderson Group meeting was held in our largest conference room, the one with the view of the Rocky Mountains and the imported Italian marble table. Margaret Henderson, CEO of Henderson Group, entered with her team of 4 executives, all sharp suits and sharper questions. Marcus took the lead, as always. He opened with his signature charm, cracking jokes about Denver traffic and asking about Margaret's recent ski trip to Aspen. But when it came time to dive into the strategy, something felt different. The market analysis Riley put together shows some interesting trends, he began, clicking to my carefully crafted slides. But as he spoke, I noticed the small mistakes. He misread a key statistic, confused two competitor names, and completely skipped over the implementation timeline that tied everything together. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Marcus, this projection here shows 15% growth in Q3, but your verbal summary mentioned 18%. Which is it? Marcus glanced at me, a flash of uncertainty crossing his face before he recovered. Riley can clarify the specifics. She's been diving deep into the numbers. For the next 20 minutes, I fielded every detailed question while Marcus offered vague commentary about big picture thinking and strategic vision. By the time the meeting ended with polite handshakes and promises to be in touch soon, I could see the doubt in Margaret Henderson's eyes. Back in Marcus's office, he closed the door and loosened his tie. That was a tough room, he said, shaking his head. Henderson's team is known for being detail-oriented, sometimes to a fault. They get so caught up in the numbers that they miss the forest for the trees. I stared at him, waiting for acknowledgement that I'd carried the entire technical portion of the presentation, that my work had been what kept us from falling apart completely. Instead, he continued, this is exactly what I was talking about last night, Riley. Strategy isn't just about having the right data. It's about reading the room, adjusting on the fly, knowing when to pivot. That's something that comes with experience. The data was accurate, I said quietly. The projections were sound. The implementation plan was comprehensive. Of course. It was, Marcus replied with a patronizing smile. You do excellent work. But without the right presentation, without the right framing, even perfect data can fall flat. That's why you need guidance. That's why this partnership works. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. That afternoon, Margaret Henderson called. Not Marcus's line. Mine. Riley, her voice was crisp and professional. I wanted to follow up on this morning's presentation. Your analysis was impressive. Very thorough. Thank you, Ms. Henderson. I appreciate that. I have to ask, she continued, how much of the strategic framework was your work? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could deflect, give Marcus credit, play the loyal team member. Or I could tell the truth. All of it, I said. The market analysis, competitive positioning, growth projections, and implementation timeline. I built it from the ground up over the past 3 weeks. There was a pause. I thought so. Listen, Riley, I'm going to be direct with you. We're not moving forward with Pinnacle for this project. But I'd like to talk to you about something else. Are you available for lunch tomorrow? That night, I sat in my one-bedroom apartment in Lodo, staring at my laptop screen. I'd opened a new document and typed a single line, what if he's wrong? For 2 years, I'd accepted Marcus's version of reality. That my work was good but needed his polish. That my ideas had potential but required his strategic overlay. That clients trusted him, not me. But today, Margaret Henderson had seen through the performance. She'd recognized where the real value was coming from. I closed the laptop and made myself a cup of tea, my mind racing. Tomorrow's lunch could change everything. But first, I needed to figure out what everything actually was. Margaret Henderson's office occupied the entire top floor of the Henderson Group building, with panoramic views of downtown Denver and the mountains beyond. She gestured for me to sit across from her glass desk, then poured coffee from a sleek espresso machine in the corner. I'll cut to the chase, Riley, she said, settling into her chair. We've been looking for a strategic consultant to help us navigate a complex acquisition. After yesterday's presentation, it's clear that the real strategic mind behind that work wasn't the one doing most of the talking. I wrapped my hands around the warm coffee mug, trying to process what she was saying. I'd like to offer you a consulting contract. Direct engagement, no intermediaries. 6 months, with the possibility of extension based on results. She slid a folder across the desk. The compensation is outlined there, along with the scope of work. I opened the folder, and my breath caught. The fee was more than I made in 8 months at Pinnacle. But more than the money, it was the title at the top of the contract, Lead Strategic Consultant, Henderson Group Acquisition Initiative. I'm flattered, Ms. Henderson. But I have a non-compete agreement with Pinnacle. I can't work directly with clients. Margaret smiled. I had our legal team review Pinnacle's standard contracts. The non-compete only applies if you're working for a direct competitor or if you're soliciting Pinnacle's existing clients. This would be a new business, initiated by us, for a project Pinnacle has never worked on. She leaned forward. Riley, I've been in this business for 20 years. I know talent when I see it, and I know when that talent is being wasted. The question is, are you ready to step out of someone else's shadow? I left that meeting with the contract tucked in my briefcase and a decision deadline of 1 week. But first, I had to get through the rest of my workday without Marcus noticing that my entire world had just shifted. Back at Pinnacle, Marcus was in full celebration mode. "Carter," he called out as I walked past his office. "Just got off the phone with the Morrison Industries people. They loved our pitch last month and want to expand the scope. This could be our biggest contract of the year." Morrison Industries. Another presentation I'd built from scratch while Marcus took client dinners and perfected his golf swing. Another success he'd claim as a testament to his strategic vision. "That's great news," I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "I want you to start putting together the expansion proposal. Full market entry strategy, competitive analysis, the works. Think you can handle it?" "Of course." "Good. Oh, and Riley? Let's keep this between us for now. I don't want the team getting distracted by big numbers before we've locked it down." That phrase, "between us," had always made me feel included, trusted with Marcus's confidence. Now it felt different. Like a cage door closing. Over the next 3 days, I found myself seeing everything with new eyes. The way Marcus presented my work in team meetings without attribution. How he scheduled client calls during times when I was usually out of the office, then briefed me secondhand on conversations about my own projects. The subtle ways he positioned himself as the visionary while casting me as the capable executor. I started documenting everything. Not to build a case against him, but to understand the true scope of my contributions. I pulled files from the past 2 years, traced the evolution of strategies from initial concept to final presentation, noted which ideas came from which meetings. The pattern was undeniable. I wasn't just executing Marcus's vision, I was creating the vision, building the strategy, developing the solutions. He was packaging and presenting them with the confidence of someone who'd always been told his voice carried more weight than mine. On Thursday evening, Marcus knocked on my cubicle wall. "Carter, got a minute?" I followed him into his office, where he gestured for me to sit while he remained standing, a power dynamic I'd never noticed before but now couldn't ignore. "I've been thinking about your career development," he began. "You've been with us 2 years now, and you're ready for more responsibility." My pulse quickened. A promotion could complicate the Henderson opportunity, but it might also validate everything I'd been working toward. "I'm creating a new role," Marcus continued. "Senior Strategic Analyst. It would come with a salary bump, maybe 15%, and you'd get to present to clients more often. With my supervision, of course." 15%. After 2 years of creating strategies that generated millions in revenue for the firm. After presentations that landed major contracts and analysis that saved clients from costly mistakes. "You'd be my right hand," he added with that same patronizing smile. "Think of it as an apprenticeship with one of the best strategic minds in Denver." The offer hung between us, and I realized this was a test. Not of my loyalty or my ambition, but of my self-worth. Did I believe I was worth more than being Marcus Whitfield's right hand? Did I think I could succeed without his name attached to my work? "That's a generous offer," I said carefully. "Can I have some time to think it over?" "Of course. But don't take too long, Carter. Opportunities like this don't come around often." That night, I sat in my apartment with the Henderson contract spread out on my coffee table next to Marcus's job offer. 2 paths. 2 versions of my future. I picked up my phone and called the one person whose opinion I trusted above all others, my mentor from Northwestern, Professor Diana Torres. She'd built her own consulting firm from nothing and sold it for 8 figures before returning to academia. "Riley," her voice was warm even at 10 p.m. "It's been too long. How's Denver treating you?" I told her everything. Marcus E. Henderson, the choice I was facing. She listened without interruption, asking only a few clarifying questions. "Let me ask you something," she said when I finished. "What scares you more, failing on your own, or succeeding as someone else's shadow?" The question hit like a lightning bolt. I'd been so focused on the practical considerations, salary, security, proven track record, that I'd missed the fundamental issue. "Failing on my own," I admitted. "Good. That means you're ready." "Ready for what?" "To find out what you're actually capable of when no one else is taking credit for it." The next morning, I arrived early and spent 2 hours polishing the Morrison Industries expansion proposal. Every chart was perfect, every projection was backed by solid data, every strategic recommendation was built on rigorous analysis. It was some of the best work I'd ever done. At 9 a.m., I knocked on Marcus's office door. "Come in, Carter. Please tell me you have good news about Morrison." I placed the proposal on his desk. It's complete. Full market entry strategy, competitive analysis, implementation roadmap, and risk mitigation framework. He flipped through the pages, nodding approvingly. Excellent work. This is exactly what they're looking for. He looked up with satisfaction. See? This is what I've been trying to teach you. Strategy isn't just about having good ideas, it's about executing them with precision. I stood there, watching him take ownership of my work in real time, and felt something shift inside me. Actually, Marcus, I said, there's something we need to discuss. He looked up, surprised by my tone. What's on your mind? I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. My resignation letter, printed on crisp white letterhead, dated and signed. I'm giving you my 2 weeks' notice. The color drained from his face as he scanned the letter. Riley, what is this about? If it's the promotion offer, we can negotiate. I'm sure we can find a package that works for everyone. It's not about the money, Marcus. Then what? Did someone make you a better offer? Because I can match it. Hell, I can beat it. You're valuable to this team, Carter. You're valuable to me. There it was. The admission I'd been waiting 2 years to hear. But it came wrapped in the same possessive language that had defined our entire relationship. You're right, I said. I am valuable. But not as your apprentice. Not as your right hand. Not as someone who does the work while you take the credit. His expression hardened. That's not fair, Riley. I've invested 2 years in your development. I've given you opportunities, guided your growth, opened doors you couldn't have opened yourself. You've also taken credit for every major strategy I've developed, presented my work as your own insight, and convinced me that I needed your permission to succeed. Marcus stood up, his face flushed. You think you can just walk out of here and start over? You think clients are going to trust some 28-year-old consultant with no track record? I guess we'll find out. Riley, listen to me. His voice took on an almost pleading quality. You're making a huge mistake. This industry is brutal for people without connections, without established relationships. I'm offering you a chance to build your career the right way, with backing, with support. I picked up my briefcase and headed toward the door. You're nothing without me, Carter, he called out, his composure finally cracking completely. You hear me? Nothing. You'll come crawling back in 6 months when you realize what the real world is like. I paused at the doorway and turned back to face him. He was standing behind his desk, breathing hard, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. You know what, Marcus? I said quietly. You might be right. Maybe I'm nothing without you. But I'd rather be nothing on my own terms than something on yours. I walked out of his office, past the cubicles and conference rooms where I'd spent the last 2 years building someone else's reputation. As I cleared out my desk, I could hear Marcus on the phone behind his closed door, his voice carrying through the thin walls. Margaret? Marcus Whitfield. I understand there might be some confusion about the Morrison project scope, I smiled. And kept packing. The first thing I did after leaving Pinnacle was buy a laptop. Not because I needed one, I had a perfectly good computer at home, but because I needed to mark the transition. This machine would be mine, filled with my work, my ideas, my strategies. No one else's fingerprints on the keyboard. I signed the Henderson Group contract that afternoon, and by Monday morning, I was sitting in a temporary office on the 32nd floor of their building, surrounded by financial reports, market analyses, and acquisition documents. The project was bigger than I'd imagined. Henderson Group was considering acquiring 3 smaller firms in the renewable energy sector, and they needed a comprehensive strategy for integration, market positioning, and competitive advantage. It was the kind of complex, high-stakes work I'd always dreamed of leading. And for the first time in my career, I was doing it without someone else's name attached to the outcome. The acquisition targets were diverse: Solar Tech Innovations, a promising startup with breakthrough photovoltaic technology; Windforce Solutions, an established player in wind energy systems; and EcoGrid Systems, a smart grid technology company with government contracts. Each required a different approach, different risk assessments, different integration strategies. I spent the first week immersed in due diligence, building financial models and competitive analyses that made my previous work look like practice exercises. Margaret Henderson checked in daily, not to micromanage, but to ensure I had everything I needed. How are you finding independence? She asked during one of our brief meetings. Terrifying, I admitted. But in the best possible way. By the end of the second week, I had preliminary recommendations for each target, complete with risk assessments and integration timelines. But I knew the real test would come when I presented to Henderson Group's board of directors, 12 of the most experienced business minds in Colorado. The boardroom was intimidating: dark wood paneling, leather chairs, and a conference table that could seat 20. As the directors filed in, I recognized several faces from Denver Business Journal covers and industry conferences. These were people who'd built companies, navigated complex mergers, survived market crashes. I opened my presentation with a simple statement: "Good morning. I'm Riley Carter, and over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you how to acquire $42 million in renewable energy assets while positioning Henderson Group as the dominant player in Colorado's clean energy market." No attribution to Marcus. No hedging language about needing further guidance. Just confidence backed by rigorous analysis. I walked them through each acquisition target, explaining not just what the companies did, but why they fit together strategically. Solar Tech's technology could be integrated with Windforce distribution network. EcoGrid's government relationships could open doors for both smaller companies. Together, they formed a comprehensive clean energy portfolio that none of Henderson's competitors could match. The questions came fast and hard. Board members challenged my valuations, questioned my integration timelines, pushed back on my market projections. But I had answers. Real answers, backed by data I'd gathered and analyzed. Myself. "Ms. Carter," interrupted board member Thomas Chen, former CEO of a major utility company, "these acquisition costs assume significant synergies between the three companies. What's your confidence level on realizing those synergies?" I clicked. To a detailed synergy analysis I'd spent 3 days perfecting. Based on my operational assessment, I'm projecting 18 months to achieve full integration benefits, with 65% confidence on the conservative estimates and 40% confidence on the aggressive projections. But here's what's interesting: I walked them through the risk scenarios, the contingency plans, the market variables that could impact each projection. It was the kind of thorough strategic thinking I'd always been capable of, finally given room to breathe. When I finished, the room was quiet. Board Chair Patricia Valdez leaned back in her chair and smiled. "Well," she said, "that was refreshing." The vote was unanimous. Henderson Group would proceed with all 3 acquisitions, following my integration strategy and timeline. The total deal value, $47 million. As the board members filed out, congratulating Margaret on her excellent new consultant, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Not relief at avoiding failure, but satisfaction at achieving success entirely on my own terms. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the Henderson announcement in the Business Journal. Impressive work. DT. Diana. Torres." My mentor had been following my career transition. I was still processing the day's events when my phone rang. "Marcus. Riley." His voice was strained, carefully controlled. "I heard about the Henderson deal. Congratulations." "Thank you. Listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot with your departure. I may have said some things in the heat of the moment that I regret." I waited, letting him fill the silence. "The truth is, you were a valuable member of the team, and I should have done more to recognize that. I'd like to make things right." "What did you have in mind?" "Come back to Pinnacle. I'm prepared to offer you a partnership track. Equity participation, your name on the door eventually, full creative control over your projects." A partnership. Everything I thought I'd wanted when I first started working for him. "That's a generous offer, Marcus. You belong here, Riley. You know that, right? This is where you learned the business, where you developed your skills. We're family." Family. The word that had once made me feel included now sounded like chains. "I appreciate the offer," I said. "But I'm good where I am." "Riley, be realistic. One successful project doesn't make a career. Henderson is a single client. What happens when that contract ends? You'll be starting from zero again, scrambling for work, competing against established firms with deeper resources." I looked around. My temporary office, at the whiteboards covered with strategy frameworks, the desk piled with due diligence reports, the window overlooking a city full of companies that needed the kind of strategic thinking I could provide. "You know what, Marcus? You might be right. Maybe this is just one successful project. Maybe I will struggle to build a client base. Maybe I'm not ready for the challenges of running my own consulting practice." I paused, letting him think he was winning. "But here's what I've learned over the past month," I continued. "I'd rather fail trying to build something of my own than succeed as a supporting character in someone else's story." The line went quiet. "Besides," I added, "I won't be starting from zero. Margaret Henderson has already referred me to 3 other CEOs. Apparently, word travels fast when someone delivers $47 million in value." I hung up and immediately started drafting an email to Professor Torres. Subject line: "Ready for the next step." 3 months later, Carter Strategic Consulting occupied a small but elegant office in downtown Denver's financial district. The space wasn't large, just me, an associate fresh out of business school named Kevin Park, and a part-time administrative assistant, but it was ours. Our client list had grown to include Henderson Group, now on a retained consulting agreement. 2 mid-sized technology companies, a healthcare nonprofit, and a renewable energy startup that Margaret had connected me with. We weren't competing with the major consulting firms yet, but we were building something sustainable. More importantly, we were building something honest. Every strategy recommendation came with my name attached. Every client presentation was delivered by the person who'd done the analysis. Success and failure were both mine to own. One evening, as I was finishing up a competitive analysis for a new client, Kevin knocked on my office door. "Riley, there's someone here to see you. Says he doesn't have an appointment, but it's important." I looked up to see Marcus Whitfield standing in our small reception area, looking uncomfortable and older than I remembered. "Hello, Riley." "Marcus. This is a surprise. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. See how you're settling in." He glanced around the office, taking in the framed client testimonials on the walls, the strategic framework sketched on whiteboards, the general atmosphere of productive work. "Nice setup," he said. "Cozy. It serves our needs. What can I do for you?" He shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to apologize. For how things ended between us. For some of the things I said when you resigned. I gestured to the chairs across from my desk. He sat down, suddenly looking less like the powerful executive who'd once controlled my career and more like someone who'd lost something important. "I've had some time to think about our working relationship," he continued. "About the contributions you made to Pinnacle's success. I realize now that I didn't always give you the credit you deserved. I appreciate you saying that. The truth is, Riley, you were the best strategic mind I've ever worked with. Your analysis, your insights, your ability to see patterns that others missed, it was remarkable." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I told myself I was mentoring you, guiding your development. But looking back, I think I was threatened by how good you were. How quickly you grasped concepts that took me years to understand." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. I convinced myself that my experience, my relationships, my ability to present to clients, that those things were more valuable than your strategic thinking. But I was wrong. I studied his face, looking for the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to, but finding only genuine regret. "Marcus, why are you telling me this now?" He sighed. "Because Pinnacle is struggling. We lost the Morrison contract 3 weeks after you left. The Henderson Group announced they were switching consulting firms. 2 other major clients have indicated they're looking at alternatives. The admission hung between us. I need your help," he said quietly. "Not as an employee, not as someone working under my supervision. As a partner. Equal billing, equal decision-making, equal credit." I leaned back in my chair, processing the request. 6 months ago, this offer would have felt like vindication. Now it felt like something else entirely. "I'm flattered, Marcus. But I'm not interested in saving Pinnacle." His face fell. "Riley, please. I know I made mistakes, but we built something good together. We can build it again, the right way this time." "We didn't build anything together," I said gently. "I built strategies, you presented them. I solved problems, you took credit. That's not partnership, that's exploitation with good intentions." I stood up and walked to the window overlooking downtown Denver. "The truth is, Marcus, I don't want to be your partner. I don't want to fix your company or save your reputation. I want to build my own." He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You really think you can compete with the established firms? Build something that lasts?" I turned back to face him. "I don't know. But I'm going to find out." Marcus stood up, straightening his jacket. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, might try one more appeal to convince me to return. Instead, he extended his hand. "For what it's worth, Riley, I think you're going to succeed. And when you do, I hope you'll remember that not everyone who held you back meant to." I shook his hand. "I won't forget the lessons, Marcus. Even the ones you didn't mean to teach." After he left, I sat in my office as the sun set over the Rocky Mountains, thinking about the journey from that first conversation in his corner office to this moment. I'd gone from believing I was nothing without his guidance to building something entirely my own. My phone buzzed with an email from a potential new client, a Fortune 500 company looking for strategic consulting on a market expansion. The subject line read, "Referral from Margaret Henderson, can we schedule a meeting?" I smiled and started typing my response. No need to check with anyone, no need to get approval, no need to worry about whether someone else would take credit for the work, just me, my skills, And the opportunity to find out what I was truly capable of when no one else was holding the reins. Outside my window, Denver sparkled in the evening light, full of companies and challenges and possibilities. I had work to do. 6 months later, Carter Strategic Consulting moved to a larger office with a team of 4 consultants and a client roster that included 2 Fortune 500 companies. The Business Journal article announcing our series of funding round included a quote that I framed and hung in our conference room: "Success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right." I never did hear from Marcus again. But I sometimes wondered if he'd learned to see the strategic minds around him with clearer eyes. I hoped so. Everyone deserves the chance to discover what they're capable of when someone believes in them, even if that someone is themselves. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.